Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. More absolute chaos in the Rostermania world, with big questions being raised over the last few days as to what's happening in the Americas, but the attention now is turning to the Pacific. DRX, after failing to qualify for Shanghai, are deciding to make a roster change, and a majorly surprising one at that. Lots of criticism here, but Stax is gone from their team. What is going on? What teams could he potentially go to in the future? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. This is Sadak potentially teasing some sort of announcement over the coming days. We're pretty sure that things are, of course, happening at Loud. The Pancada return potentially seems to be on the cards. We shall see if that goes anywhere, but there is definitely a feeling right now that Loud will and need to make changes. Of course, after failing to qualify for Shanghai, if you're a big name team, you've not made it to Shanghai, you've got to consider some changes. And DRX, of course, not making it when T1 did. Now, of course, questions there because they didn't lose to T1, and that is, of course, based on the format of the tournament, as we'll discuss here over the coming minutes. But, if you fail to qualify as a big name team, especially with the World Championship on the horizon, you've got to think about what you potentially do in terms of making a move. This, though, is drama on Gen.G. So, of course, they did make it out there to China for Shanghai. But if you guys are aware, we talked about this even before the tournament, Gen.G, not the most popular team in China. If you guys are unfamiliar with the lore behind this, a couple of years ago now, I think they made some statements about Taiwan, referring to Taiwan as a country. Of course, that doesn't sit well with, the narrative inside China. And as a result of that, if you're known to be a Gen.G player in China, it ain't going to end too well for you. So Meteor of Gen.G said they haven't even got to play scrims in Shanghai, and he can't say the reason for that there. He can explain it when he's back in Korea. Now, the reason is probably because local Chinese teams will refuse to scrim against them because they represent Gen.G. And we actually saw the same thing on Texture, right? So obviously great player for Gen.G. He has been playing Chinese ranked, and the problem is that if they know that he plays for Gen.G, then it's not going to go well because they will, they'll troll him, they'll team flash him, they'll deliberately try and lose to make sure this guy loses. And he's now changed over to the Edward Gaming bundle, so others won't hate him so much, basically. And we actually saw this on his stream that okay, the quality isn't the greatest here, but this is him throwing away his Gen.G classic at the start of the round on Breeze so that they can't see that he's got it, right? So it's actually really sad. But, he's just been going through a hard time. And, this is what Meteor said as well. So basically there's some sort of, Chinese ranked retaliation, not even just from, ranked players, but apparently from some of, the teams as well. Because typically, let's say, this event was in Europe, or it was in, Istanbul or Berlin or, Madrid, for example, as of course it was. You go over there and you'll practice against the European teams. And, theoretically that be the same thing here. You'd practice against the top Chinese teams from the region that either qualified or didn't qualify for the event, because there's a pretty big league over there in China. And what other teams do you play? You're not really going to be able to practice against teams that you might play at the event. But for Gen.G, this is potentially going to hold them back quite considerably, right? It's not just about what this, how interesting this is from, let's say, even a political lens, but it also has direct impact on their performance because they can't get the practice they want and they need maybe going into this event right now. And that is, of course, nonetheless problematic when it comes to playing the big teams. Let's talk about, though, the way that the games have been going. Here's Master Shanghai. This was the result of Footy Sports versus DRG, Dragon Ranger Gaming. They put up a fight here. I was pretty impressed, actually. I thought Footy Sports might bowl over this series, but they didn't. DRG put up a fight. They eventually lose a pretty close series. The Ascent was 14-12 in the end on the Ascent. I thought this was going to go to 3 at one point, but it didn't. DRG just fell short. They bow out of the tournament. We also just had, by the way, this ridiculous series, FPX versus Heretics. This was categorically absurd. The first two maps, okay, whatever. Team Heretics dominated the Sunset, FPX dominated the Lotus, but the Icebox was a ridiculous game of Valorant. 17-15 in the end. Woot, by the way, dropped 37 frags over this Icebox game to get the victory. I think that's the second most we've seen in an international event in a map. Ridiculous stuff. And look, no mini boo, but apparently when you've got Woot, no problem, right, on that Raze and on that Jet. So this is the way, of course, things look. So Heretics taking down FPX 2-1. That puts them through to the playoff stages. That puts FPX out of the tournament at 1-2. T1, by the way, if I didn't mention it yesterday, they lost to, of course, Leviathan, right? They lost, in that 0-1 game to Lev. I think we did talk about this, but I know the question was after the fact about this one. is T1 a better team than DRX? Because at the qualifiers in the Pacific side, they didn't play each other because that's the way the format worked. T1 went through, DRX did not go through, but the only teams that DRX have lost to are Gen.G and PaperX, arguably the other two best teams. I think DRX would have put up a better fight here than T1, but not qualifying simply wasn't good enough, and we'll discuss the implications there in a second. The final game, of course, by the way, is currently ongoing. FUT Esports versus Lev. This is currently live as I'm recording this video. Sunset was 13-1 to FUT Esports. So, yeah, there's that. That was on Lev's pick as well. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what FUT Esports are turning into right now, but the game to Lotus, Lev are potentially bouncing back here. So, either way, it's going to be fascinating to see who advances, and then of those 4 teams, then of course they will be drawn into opposition by the opponents they will play, who will effectively get to choose their opponents. But before we get to that, we've got to talk about the Rostermania chaos that is currently ongoing, because we are very confident that Som and FNS are joining NRG, which is so wild to think about again, but it is going to be happening, as has been reported by like all sources. Even Som has been making it rather clear here that, he's kind of ready to go again. Bro just announced it already. Obviously, Demon 1 getting benched was probably the most shocking roster change of this period so far. Marved gone was, maybe even, I wouldn't say expected, obviously, but Marved gone was definitely something surprising. Demon 1 gone after just a few months from being the World Championship MVP. That is, to be fair, a different question, I think, entirely. Marv, though, was raising the question, like, is it over for me, right? Is my time dusted? Am I going to just have to go to the retirement home because, getting dropped here from NRG not ideal? Marv is still, to me, easily a VCT caliber player, but where he goes, that is a question where he might potentially, turn up to. Which teams need a player in that role? I think there's a few teams that come the off-season Marv will look at and be considered for, but I don't think a return to NRG seems especially likely now, and some of the other organisations that might be considered are doing pretty well, the likes of 100T. It might not have been long ago where their controller in Bang wasn't performing so well. Now all of a sudden 100T are looking really good. So where Marved goes is tough, and there have been rumours, to be fair, that some of the kind of Brazilian teams, even in the Americas, they might need to consider some sort of international roster at some point because the strength and depth in their region isn't so good. And of course Marved could also consider doing a Yay or doing, a Narrate or something and going over to the Pacific or Europe respectively. Obviously Boostio twisting the knife as he always does, he says, yeah, your time is done, buddy, pig, or whatever he says, which is pretty brutal. But FNS is like, look, no, your time ain't done, brother, like, you'll be back type thing. But of course FNS has not taken his spot, technically, I guess. FNS has taken Demon 1's spot, and Som has taken Marv's spot in that respective role. But, Snake replies here, and yeah, basically FNS has come in here for Marved in some respects. So, fascinating scenario, but the real roster drama of today was waking up to this morning on DRX VALORANT confirming that Stax is going to be gone from their team. Stax, like, arguably, at least, from my perspective, the face of the team in many ways. And one of the reasons why this team was so competitive. Now, DRX have been in such an interesting spot over the last few months. When, RB was there, Zest was there, they had Stax, they had, Mako, and of course that team. Things were looking good, but things changed relatively quickly. RB's gone, Zest is gone, they've made their moves. They brought in other, very talented players. Flashback, for example, of course, is now taking a break, but he was really good, I thought. Foxy9 was a good find as well. But they confirmed that Stax has been benched from the team. They've made the difficult decision to place him to the bench. He'll remain a part of the team, so he's not going to be an unrestricted free agent. He is a restricted free agent. He can explore opportunities, but if he wants to go anywhere, they're going to have to buy him out of that roster. We also saw this from Stax himself, explaining things from his POV. As he says, we learned and grew together in the past 4 years. The experiences I gained with DRX made me who I am today. Cried and laughed together with all of my teammates and coaches on the stage. Thankful and happy to have been a part of the ride. When things were hard, I was able to keep going with your support. So nice statement, I thought, here from Stax, not really addressing why precisely this was the case. And look, this clip still lives rent-free in my mind, kissing goodbye to Cloud9. So, what a player, what a moment this was in Valorant history, but it seems like one failure to qualify for an international, and all of a sudden they're making pretty major changes, right? Like, these are their results in the last several months here. They played at the Africa Valorant League. They went down to Sentinels and Paper Rex there, but of course, they were the 2 finalists, and that was a long time ago now in the off-season. Since then, they've beaten everyone. They've beaten, you know, Detonation, Talon, Secret, Global Esports, T1. They beat Gen.G as well, so they can beat them. They lost to them twice, however, and of course, most importantly, that 2-1 defeat to both Gen.G and Paper X back at the Stage 1 playoffs. This is what has done them in some respects, or at least done Stax in, that, you know, this is how things went. DRX played Paper X, they lost 2-1, they then lost to Gen.G 2-1. Had they won that series, had they won this series, would they have beaten T1? I think so. I don't think T1, like, T1 got a great victory, 2-1 against Gen.G, and 2-0'd Secret, and fair play. They, in some ways, deserve to make it. But I think that if the format was better here for the playoffs, DRX are the 3rd best team, and maybe 3rd best isn't good enough, right? And maybe that's the point from DRX, that, look, even though they potentially could have made Shanghai if the format was different, they still are not as good as Gen.G and Paper X, and as a result, changes needed to be made regardless, and maybe that is understandably so. But what do you do, right? What do you do if you're DRX now? Because, you know, many of their players I've mentioned over the last several months and years are now gone. I mean, Buzz, Mako, Fox, and Bay, and like, who do you get instead? Do you think, wow, like, this, you know, this RB guy, this Zest guy, they would need the back end. What they need is Flashback to return, I think, from his kind of time away. That would be an important step. But yeah, Termi, of course, their head coach, what is he cooking? You know, what is he cooking here? Because I think from my perspective and from many fans' perspectives, getting rid of Stax in this case is a massively surprising move, and it's going to take some justification with the changes they make, and of course, where Stax might potentially go next. There are other options out there, but, you know, it's very unclear, and it's not like there's all the time in the world for him to figure it out, because, you know, the end of Shanghai is coming up in not that far from now. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Wait. Whoa! Show Wood!
With 4?
Oh!
Oh my god!
Whoa! I'm fucking playing Flex after that, for sure.
Woot starts this off.
Remember the Flex player now.
Don't you can play Flex from now on.
Double duels, maybe?
We could double
Kai is
duel.
fine for me, all good.
What a day he's having.
Neon Jet.
Practicing that fucking gecko.
It's gonna be in a big part because of the way Woot has stepped up on these duelists.
Bang!
I love it, Doug.